Today, we will take a look at the book A Narrative History of Wise County, Virginia by Charles Johnson. Johnson is the only account that exists that has a copy of the trial transcripts and affidavits. While we will be doing a quick review of everything we have covered so far, we will also go into the possibilities of why Johnson added in the rumors that were very easily debunked by the trial transcripts. Come along with us as we talk about the man who was serving as Wise County, Virginia's court clerk at the time of the Dr. Taylor trial. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The official count of the trial. Officially, the trial of Dr. Marshall Benton Taylor lasted a total of 6 days. The trial began on Monday, September 5th, and ended with the jury's verdict on the morning of Saturday, September 10th, 1892. But from the evidence presented in the affidavits, the prosecution and the defense both rested before noon on Friday, September 9th. Shortly after jury deliberation began on that same day, the foreman of the jury, W.M. Wolfe, sent a request to the judge asking to inspect Dr. Taylor's rifle. This request was granted. However, the counsel for the defense was not notified of this request, nor that it had been granted, until after the jury rendered its verdict on September 10th. A look at the book, A Narrative History of Wise County, Virginia. In his book, A Narrative History of Wise County, Virginia, Charles A. Johnson titles Chapter 32 simply as The Pound Massacre. The chapter contains 68 pages and is subdivided into multiple sections and covers everything from a description of everyday life in Gladeville, which is now Wise, a life sketch of M.B. Taylor, a brief look at Tout Hall, and an essay on the West Virginia shootout between the Fleming brothers and the posse sent to arrest them. Dispersed throughout these sections in no chronological order, Johnson tells a story of the Pound Gap Massacre. The second section of the chapter is subtitled The Trial. This section starts with a very accurate description of the courthouse, and Johnson then goes into great lengths to include the names of everyone involved in both the Taylor and Hall trials, save one, his own. He then renders a description of the jury's verdict in the Taylor trial. Then he includes a self-portrait with the caption that he was serving his first term as deputy clerk during the trial. We believe that this inclusion of the photo at this point, just as he relates the verdict of the trial, holds a specific meaning, if not a message, to his readers. We also believe that this specific message here is that he was one of the court clerks who worked on the transcript of the Taylor trial, that it was his first court case, and he is very intimate with the details of the case. Did Johnson try to send a message through time? In the next section of Chapter 32, titled The Massacre, our theory that Charles A. Johnson is trying to relay a veiled message becomes more apparent. He does so by relaying often and widely told rumor about the timing of the massacre. This rumor he, as a former court clerk, would have known as an easily discounted falsehood. At the bottom of page 378, Johnson says, quote, "Then it was revealed that old man Doc, who had been guarding Talton Hall, had slipped away from the rest of the guard the night before the awful massacre, and had not returned to his post of duty, nor had he been heard from," unquote. Johnson tells us that he served his first term as deputy court clerk during the Taylor trial. It is true that Dr. Taylor had acted as a captain of the guard during the trial of Talton Hall. However, the Hall trial had concluded in February of 1892, after which Hall had been sent to Lynchburg jail to await his appeal. Hall had his appeal rejected by the Court of Appeals and was returned to Wise County just before the Taylor trial began in September 1892. This means that Johnson would have also served as deputy clerk during the confirmation hearing and hanging of Hall. Ultimately, this means that Charles Johnson knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that there was no way that this rumor about Doc Taylor had even the remotest possibilities of being true. Yet, why would Johnson print this rumor as a known fact in telling the story without offering to debunk it? Johnson does this very same thing several times in Chapter 32. As we have stated, the chapter is broken down into several sections or subchapters. Each of these sections covers separate events and or multiple stories about the events surrounding the Pound Gap Massacre. Some, like the rumor about Taylor leaving his guard duty, are later debunked in the transcript of the trial, if you know what to look for, or rather, their absence. However, these, like several others that Johnson does not debunk in his book, in some way, would be apparent to anyone intimately familiar with the case, or someone who had rigorously researched the case. Verdict recap. We have told you everything that we believe that you need to know before telling you about the appeal of Dr. Marshall Benton Taylor. To recap, on September 10, 1892, the jury presented its verdict to the court. Quote, "We, the jury, find the prisoner, M.B. Taylor, guilty of murder of the first degree. Signed, William Wolfe, foreman." Unquote. Quote, "The laws of the state then enforced provided that in the conviction of murder of the first degree, the law fixed the punishment and not the jury, which punishment was death by hanging. The prisoner, M.B. Taylor, after the verdict was returned against him, moved the court in arrest of judgment and to set aside the verdict of the jury and grant him a new trial for various grounds of error assigned at bar, which motion the court overruled and the prisoner by his counsel accepted. 12 bills of exception were signed by the court and ordered to be made part of the record of the case, and an appeal to the Supreme Court was thereupon noted." Unquote. Judge Williams then sentenced the prisoner and set a date of December 10, 1892, for the execution of that sentence. Taylor was then confined to the city jail of Lynchburg to await action of the Supreme Court on his appeal. December soon came with no word from the court. Then, at the last minute, Supreme Court Justice Richardson issued a stay of execution on December 8, 1892, and issued a preliminary court date for the last week of June, 1893. The appeal and exceptions. Charles Johnson tells us more about Dr. Taylor's Supreme Court appeal than any other source, and he tells us very little. But what he does tell us in 3 separate instances is that 12 exceptions to the trial were made by the defense team. He tells us that these exceptions were ordered to be attached to the transcript of the trial and sent to the appellate court. He then tells us that he had finally obtained the only known copy of the transcript of the trial from the appellate court. I want you to guess what was missing from the transcript. But Johnson never mentions it again. But he does ask his readers to ask themselves several questions just before he presents the appellate court's copy of the transcript. Quote, "Was the Red Fox proven guilty beyond all reasonable doubt of the crime of which he was charged? Was the verdict of the jury rendered against him a just verdict? Was the action of the Supreme Court of Appeals in refusing the prisoner a new trial and affirming the judgment of the lower court sound and beyond criticism?" Unquote. Next week we will have the verdict from the appellate court and what may have happened behind closed doors that would lead to the dramatic production that would be carried out concerning the death of Dr. Taylor. In a future video, we will also get into Dr. Taylor's faith and how it lent to the production that was to take place before he went to the gallows. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Killing Rock, otherwise known as the Pound Gap Massacre. Please don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers report that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.